Hello, everybody, and welcome to Red Wings Daily, presented to you by FanArch. I'm your host, Kirk MckNight, author of The Voices of Hockey, Broadcasters Reflect on the Fastest Game on Earth, which I will add is now available on Audible. And I'm coming to you from the southwest corner of Washington State, 2,454 miles from Little Caesars Arena. Now, LCA was the site of the Red Wings' 4-1 loss Saturday, a matinee game, the second of the away and home against the Penguins. Now, before we jump on the Red Wings too much, say 4-1, what an awful loss. It honestly was 2-1 for a good portion of the game. It was a one-shot game for the Red Wings for quite a while. Two of those goals were empty netters. And so really the game was pretty much anybody's game until about a minute left in the third period. But one thing I will point to from that game on Saturday is the fact that the Red Wings only put 12 shots on goal in the entire game. 5 shots on goal in the first, 4 in the second, and 3 in the third. When you only got 12 shots on goal, folks, it's not looking good for you as far as winning, unless you got Patrick Waugh in the 93 playoffs, Jean-Sebastien Giguère in the 2003 playoffs, Dominic Hasek in the 2002 playoffs. That's what I'm saying. You know, these playoffs that are riddled with shutout victories, unless that is the case, 12 shots on goal with 1 shot going in is not going to win it for you. So kind of a tough one to look at. And when I was texting Ken Cal, radio broadcaster for the Red Wings after the game, he just said we just had no legs today. Not a lot of offense going on right there. The Penguins, I was watching the game, they were strangling them pretty good. Really, even when they got into their zone, there was just no positioning to get a good shot on net. It was really wild to see, and it looked like they just gave it their all and left it all out there. I know that we were talking about the Penguins in the last couple of weeks, some of these hard losses that they were taking in overtime and in the shootout when they've had really late leads and things like that happen. Having a 4-goal lead against San Jose 2 or 3 weeks back and ended up losing in the shootout. Having a goal lead against the Ducks with like less than a second left and basically having that game go to overtime in a shootout and ended up only getting 1 of the 2 points. So, things are catching up with the Penguins right now as far as the good fortune. Yesterday they had a victory in which they were trailing and ended up winning in overtime against Columbus. So they're really showing some signs of life there, but I don't want to panic too much about the Red Wings in this loss. It was a tough loss, but Gibby played pretty well. And we'll talk a little bit more about Gibby in the spotlight, but just a couple of things, couple of notes. 2 for 2 on the penalty kill and 0 for 2 on the power play. One of the positive notes of the night is the fact that DeBrincat got a goal, and so DeBrincat took the lead back from Larkin for most goals on the team. He's got 22 now. Another positive from the game is the fact that the Red Wings really weren't in the penalty box that much. There was only 2 penalties called against them, so 4 minutes of penalties, but honestly 1 of those 4 minutes was basically serving after the 4-on-4 because simultaneous penalties more or less. Red Wings got penalized a minute into their own power play, and so it went 4-on-4 for a minute, and then they basically had to fight it off for another minute. So that's pretty good to keep the special teams out there. Really only on the defensive side, only out there for 3 minutes out of the 60. That's actually a really good thing to look at. It's just not getting any shots on goal. It really bites you, and so that's really what happened. Something to take away from the game is the fact that the Red Wings 1 point 1 point out of a possible 4 in their last 2 games, and with Tampa Bay winning their 7th game in a row, the Red Wings are now in 2nd place in the Atlantic Division. What's funny is the Golden Knights yesterday lost their 5th game in a row, but somehow, it being an overtime loss to Chicago, they managed to climb into 1st place in the Pacific Division. So this is quite an interesting look on things. You lose 5 straight and you end up in 1st place. And you don't even necessarily, you lose two straight, and all of a sudden you're looking up at a Tampa Bay team that seems pretty resurgent, and they've done a couple of these so far this season. So I don't plan on them not doing another couple as the second half goes underway. So it being Monday, it's a good time to bust out league laundry. And in this league laundry, we'll just talk about a couple of players getting suspensions. Uh, Basically, there's a great website. It's called the NHL Safety. Uh, Board of Safety website, and it tells you like all the different suspensions that are being handed out, uh, players having to go through like uh, hearings and things like that. And this week, they both happened on January 3rd. So they both happened on Saturday. One of them was Logan Stanley for punching Brady Tkachuk, and the other was John Beecher for roughing Nashville's Michael McCarron. So both of those guys are getting the 1 game suspension. There was a lot of talk about Logan Stanley's punch on Brady Tkachuk. A lot of it was I just love it. I'm a member of the media myself. I work for a newspaper in Washington, and I try to avoid the triggering words like sucker punch, but it seems like that has been thrown around like candy as far as this whole hit on Brady Tkachuk. I'm not trying to besmirch Brady Tkachuk. I'm trying to besmirch more of the reporters and the journalists who are sitting there saying sucker punched. I mean, stop with the homerism, folks. Let's just kind of keep it in stop being such a homer about it. But yeah, I mean, it really probably was pretty devastating. The fact if the league is calling Logan Stanley in for player safety kinds of conferences in a sense to have a one-on-one with him to talk about that stuff. Obviously, it was pretty bad. But like I said, I get triggered when I see things like that in the media because obviously you're trying to get that sex appeal in the story and say things like sucker punch, and obviously people start clicking on that link and saying, oh my goodness. So Logan Stanley plays for the Winnipeg Jets, and that was in the midst of the game where it was the 9th loss in a row for Winnipeg. So it's a very tough season for them. It's one to forget, following one to remember, in which they won the President's Trophy. So I think a lot of aggravation, especially out of the defenseman Logan Stanley. So when things like that happen, you're going to be in hot water for getting in a fight. The ref was trying to break it up, and you took another punch, and so that's why you got the unsportsmanlike. That's why you get the misconduct, and that's why you end up sitting in a room with a bunch of personnel from the NHL talking to you about player safety. So not a good time really for anybody, especially when you're taking a few thousand out of your wallet for these kinds of things. So it's been a lot less in the league than it has in the past. Obviously, they're really clamping down on things. They're really starting to hit the wallets a lot more when it comes to these fines, just to basically act as a deterrent. So, that really is kind of what we saw more of in this last week. Not too much, not too busy as far as the NHL safety website goes, player safety and all that, and enforcement of rule breaking, but still very frustrating for Logan Stanley, I'm sure, to be on a team that was really looking to be poised to be one of the teams to represent the West in the Stanley Cup final last year, and basically couldn't even make it out of the second round. And now this year, with everything piling up in the midst of a 9-game losing streak, of course the frustration is going to be taken out, and unfortunately it was on Brady Tkachuk. And even more unfortunate is the fact that we get to face Brady Tkachuk tonight. And I mean, because obviously when there's just so much hoopla around things like that, you don't want to be in the middle of the game, because I think it brings a lot of the distraction of the off the ice and brings it onto the ice. And to me, that's just never good for the sport. But, it obviously sells things too, though. A lot of people will be talking about this. Brady Tkachuk has missed 20 games this year. He even aggravated his thumb a little bit. So he's not, on the will not play or anything like that for this game. Olmark was. So just a little bit of a preview is Olmark, personal reasons, I guess, is not looking to be in between the pipes for the Senators, which may be a positive for the Red Wings, hopefully. He's their #1 goaltender, so that might be a good sign for them moving forward as they play the first of 4 against the Senators tonight. So a little bit about the Senators right now. They're on a 2-game winning streak, whereas the Red Wings are on a 2-game losing streak. Detroit in their last, Detroit away from Little Caesars Arena, they're 10-7-3, and Ottawa at their arena are 10-7-3 as well. So identical records, Red Wings for their road and Ottawa for their home. So versus the division, they're both in the same division. Like I said, this is the first of 4 games that the Red Wings will play against the Senators this year. But they are, the Red Wings are 6-3-2 against the Atlantic, where Ottawa's 5-3-3. So it doesn't look like, to me, that one team seems to have a superior advantage over the other. The Red Wings are healthy. Nobody on the IR, nobody basically, not, out of the line, nobody out of the lineup. So that's good. And like I said, Olmark is out, and they have really, the Senators pretty much have a pretty solid and healthy lineup as well. But all eyes are going to be on Brady Tkachuk. They usually are when Ottawa plays. He and his brother have hogged the headlines a lot and just a lot of things. But obviously, coming off of the whole incident with Logan Stanley, all eyes might be a little bit on him and how he's going to play, to see if he's maybe nursing that thumb. I mean, that thumb injury has been bad enough to make him miss a quarter of the season. So, we're talking, Patrick Kane's missed 15 games because of an upper body injury. So for a thumb injury to have you out for a quarter of your season, that must be a pretty bad and thumb problem, one I would not like to have. But we'll see. We'll see how they do. We'll see if they can hopefully get some momentum. I'm hoping that McClellan really reamed him a little bit just for not getting enough offense going and getting enough shots on goal. Like I said, it wasn't necessarily a total disaster loss for the Red Wings against the Penguins on Saturday, but it definitely is a trend we don't want to see, where they're not really putting enough shots on net and getting themselves into that kind of habit. And you don't want to see too many long losing streaks. This has been the problem of the Red Wings the last couple of seasons, is having good momentum moving into the second part of the season and starting to lose that with 6 or 7 game losing streaks, which has happened in the last 2 seasons. I mentioned that we'd be talking a little bit more about Gibson. Unfortunately, Gibby was the one who took the loss in Saturday's game against the Penguins. But just a little bit about Gibby and his last 2 games, his save percentage, even though he took a loss on Saturday, his save percentage was still .931. And then his win against Winnipeg last week was .958. So he's allowed 3 goals on 53 shots over his last 2 starts, and his goals against average of 2.07 in the loss. So that's a tough loss. That's kind of tough to lose on a 2.07 goals against average. In the last 7 games, he's only had to face more than 30 shots 1 time, and that was against Carolina. And that was his other loss of his last 2. Like I said, he's really only lost a couple of games in the last 11. So hopefully he can rebound from Saturday's loss. Definitely not blaming him for Saturday's loss. If you want to blame anything, it's just the lack of getting that puck right there into the crease and getting not getting enough good looks at the net. So, folks, we'll see how we do tonight. We'll have a little bit of recap of tonight's game on tomorrow's show. Like I said, LGRW from the PNW. Go Red Wings. This has been Red Wings Daily, presented to you by FanArch.